Most of us have spent years trying to get rid of the part that binges, controlling it, shaming it, negotiating with it, exhausting ourselves, trying to make it go away. Today, I'm going to talk about what happens when you try something completely different and what that actually looks like in real life. Welcome to Binge Eating Breakthrough, the podcast to help you stop feeling out of control around food and build trust with your body. If you've tried everything but still feel stuck, you're not alone. I've been there too. I'm Jane Pilger, and I'm here to help you see binge eating in a new way so you can finally break free. Each week, you'll get the tools and insights to create peace with food and your body. Your breakthrough starts now. Hello, trusted listener. I consider you a trusted listener because I trust that you've been doing the best you can with what you've had. I trust that if willpower and determination alone were enough, you would have figured this out a long time ago. And I trust that somewhere underneath the exhaustion of this struggle, there is still a part of you that believes something different is possible. Because if you didn't, you wouldn't be listening to this podcast. Today, I'm going to talk about something that I think is at the very center of why binge eating is so hard to break free from. And that is the war that most people are fighting with themselves without even realizing it. So last week's episode was a great introduction to this concept. If you haven't listened to that one yet, you might hit pause, go check that one out, and then come back to this episode where I'm going to take it a step deeper. But you could also just keep listening to this one and get a lot of great information out of it. So whichever you decide, just know last week also addressed this concept. Now, a little more context before we dive in. Earlier this week, I hosted a live workshop called Stop Fighting the Part of You That Binges. It was a 90-minute workshop where I walked people through what we're going to be talking about in this episode, hands on. And as I was preparing for this workshop, I kept thinking, this information is too important to only reach the people who come to the workshop. This idea, this framework for understanding what's really driving the urge to binge deserves its own episode, and really how to stop fighting. Because whether you attended the workshop or whether you never heard of it, or whether you are listening to this episode years down the road, way after the existence of this workshop, what I'm about to share with you has the potential to genuinely shift how you see your relationship with food. So I am creating this episode not as a recap of the workshop. It's a teaching episode on the same concept. Of course, I can't go into all of the detail as I did in a 90-minute workshop where I guide you through a lot of this. But this is a way to get the information to more people in a format you can return to, you can share with others, and you can sit with on your own time. I created this as a resource for you that you can return to again and again. All right, so let's start at the beginning. So let's talk about parts. I want to introduce this idea. It might be new to you. It might be something you've heard me or somebody else touch on before. But either way, I want to lay this out really clearly because everything else I'm going to talk about builds on it. We are not one single unified thing, person, human. We all have different parts of ourselves, different inner voices, different modes we operate in, different versions of ourselves that show up depending on what's happening around us and inside us. And I think that when most people hear that, they nod along in a general way. Yeah, sure. I have different sides of myself, different aspects of who I am. But I'm going to go a little deeper than that because understanding the different kinds of parts and what each of them is trying to do is what makes this framework actually useful. Okay, so first of all, there are parts that we can think of as the proactive parts. These are the ones that are working hard in the background to keep you functioning, to keep things together, to prevent pain before it even has a chance to show up. So you probably know some of these very well. I'm going to identify a few, and as you're listening, just imagine for yourself, oh yeah, that one, I recognize that one. I've got that one, okay? Let's start with a perfectionist. The one that holds you to an impossibly high standard, because if everything is done right, then maybe nothing can go wrong. Maybe nobody will say something bad. Maybe we won't get rejected. There's also the people pleaser. The one that scans every room for what others need and makes sure that you provide it, because keeping people happy feels like the safest way to stay connected. We also have the inner critic, the one that points out every flaw and failure, not because that part enjoys it, because it genuinely believes if it can make you aware enough of your shortcomings, you'll fix them before anyone else notices. There's also the manager, the one that keeps the to-do list running, the calendar full, the productivity high, because staying busy means staying in control. I have a client who calls hers the taskmaster, always making sure she does everything, anticipating every problem, never letting anything slip through the cracks. We can imagine this part with her clipboard and her checklist, making sure everything's being taken care of. These are the proactive parts. Now, these parts are not bad. None of your parts are bad. They developed for real reasons. They learned somewhere along the way that staying on top of things, pleasing people, being perfect, being productive, these were ways to stay safe, ways to prevent pain. They are proactive protectors, and they've been working really hard on your behalf, often for decades. So those are the proactive ones. Now, we also have the reactive parts. So these are the ones that show up when pain has already arrived, when something has slipped through and those proactive parts couldn't hold it back. These parts, the reactive parts, they respond to distress in the moment. And this is where the binging part lives. Your binging part is a reactive protector. When something comes in, now the binging part comes in. Binging is one reactive strategy. But there's a lot more than that. It might also look like losing yourself in Netflix for 4 hours, scrolling social media until you're numb, shopping when you're upset. Anything that offers relief from a feeling that feels unbearable in the moment. These parts are not trying to harm you. They are trying to help you survive what's happening right now. Hey, quick pause to let you know that enrollment for my group coaching program, Cultivate, is open right now. Cultivate is where the work we talk about on this podcast actually happens, over time with support of people who understand the struggle. You become calm, connected, and confident with food in a way that feels nourishing, supportive, and sustainable. Doors close April 27th. Learn more at janepilger.com/cultivate. All right, let's go back to the episode. These parts in IFS, Internal Family Systems, by a guy by the name of Dick Schwartz, they're called firefighters. And these reactive protectors, they're called firefighters. And I really like the name and the image of a firefighter because if you think about if your house is on fire, if there is smoke coming from your house, the firefighters are not going to come and just ring the doorbell and wait for you to let them in. They're not going to take off their boots at the door. No, they are going to knock that door down. They are going to hose down the fire, and they don't care about the damage that they cause in your house because they just need to put out the fire. And that is the same thing that happens with your binging part. It doesn't care about the damage. This is why in that moment when you want to eat and there is that part of you that's like, I know this is going to be awful later. And that binging part is like, I don't care. I have to put out the fire right now. Now, then there's another category of parts. So we can think of these as the younger parts. These parts were formed earlier in life, often in response to experiences that were painful or overwhelming or confusing. So these younger parts are carrying something: old pain, old beliefs, old fears that never fully got processed. So the proactive parts, they're working overtime to make sure that those younger parts never have to feel that pain again. The perfectionist, the people pleaser, the critic, the taskmaster, a big part of what they're doing is making sure that those younger, more vulnerable parts stay protected. Now, when you binge, it's almost always because some sort of pain has gotten through. The proactive parts couldn't hold it back. A younger part got activated. And the reactive part, the binging part, showed up to do what it could. So that pain shows up, smoke's in the house, the firefighter, the binging part comes in to put out the fire. None of this is random. None of it is weakness. It's a system that developed to protect you, and it has been doing exactly that. Now, the difficulty comes when these parts are in conflict. When the part that wants control and the part that wants relief are locked in a battle that nobody wins. And you know what this feels like. You know what it sounds like. We have one part, one of the proactive parts, the manager, who's like, we have to eat this exact way. We have to eat perfectly. We can't eat these things. Here's the plan. Very much trying to control everything. Then we have the binging part, the firefighter, who comes in and just wants that relief in the moment. So when that internal war is running, it doesn't matter how much you want to change. The fight consumes all of the energy that the change actually requires. Now, here's what I want you to understand. The binging part is not the problem in that system. It's a response to everything else that is happening, which means that trying to eliminate it without understanding the system it's a part of is why nothing has worked the way that you hoped it would. Now, it's important to know with all of our parts, there are no bad parts. Dick Schwartz, the founder of Internal Family Systems, has a book by that name, No Bad Parts. If you're curious about this, you can check out that book. Now, here's something I want you to really sit with, because it explains a lot of the frustration that you may have felt over the years. The more you try to control, suppress, or eliminate the part of you that binges, the stronger the urges tend to become. We talked about this in last week's episode. What you resist persists. When we fight that part, it gets stronger. And I know it feels backwards. It feels like the answer should be more control, more discipline, more force of will. But what actually happens when you try to dominate one part of yourself with another is that the suppressed part doesn't disappear. It gets louder. It becomes more urgent. The screw it response gets stronger, not weaker. And you know this. You have the felt experience of this. Think about for yourself what happens when you've been really strict with food for a few days, really controlled, and then something happens. A stressful moment, a hard conversation, a night where you're just done. And suddenly, that urge doesn't feel like a gentle suggestion. It feels like a demand, like a wave you can't outrun. It's like your house is on fire and here comes the fire department. The urgency isn't random. It's the result of pressure that has been building. And the more tightly you hold the lid down, the more force builds underneath it. And at some point, the lid comes off. And this is why willpower-based approaches tend to work for a little while and then collapse. Not because you weren't trying hard enough, but because the strategy itself creates the conditions for the cycle to continue. Control leads to urgency. Urgency leads to the binge. The binge leads to shame. Shame leads to more control. And around it goes. Here we're in the cycle. And so the exit from that cycle is not more control. It's something else entirely. So I talk often about the idea that a binge is like a light on the dashboard of your car. When that light comes on, it is not the problem. It's the signal telling you there's something going on under the hood that needs attention. So the binging part is the light, and what most people spend their energy doing is trying to turn the light off without ever asking what it's pointing to. So what is it pointing to? What's going on under the hood? It's responding to something real. It shows up when you're exhausted and you have nothing left. When you're overwhelmed and you don't know how to move through what you're feeling. When restriction, real or perceived, has been running in the background and something in you has decided enough is enough. When shame is so loud that the only way to get a moment of quiet is to eat. When loneliness or stress or hopelessness has nowhere else to go. It's using food as a strategy. And that strategy creates consequences that nobody wants. Not you. And that part doesn't want them either. It does not enjoy the aftermath. It doesn't want the shame spiral that follows, but it doesn't know another way. It has one tool, the tool it has been using for years, if not decades. And it uses it because from where it sits, there is no other option. And this is the key distinction I want you to hold on to. The strategy is the problem, not the part. The part itself is trying to help you. It is doing what protective parts do, responding to pain, trying to create relief, trying to get you through something hard. The problem is that the strategy it's using creates more pain than it relieves, and it keeps you locked in a cycle that nobody wins. And when you can see that, something shifts. The part stops being the enemy and becomes something you can actually work with. So what does it actually look like to stop fighting this part and start working with it instead? I don't want this to stay abstract. I want to give you something you can do in real life. So the first movement is getting curious instead of contemptuous. When that urge, that desire, that craving to eat shows up, the habitual response for most people is some version of this. Not again. Or here we go. I can't believe I'm doing this again. I'll start over tomorrow. Screw it. I don't care. That response, even when it's just a flash of internal frustration, sends a signal to the nervous system, there's a threat. When the nervous system senses threat, the urge gets stronger, not weaker. You're essentially pouring fuel on the fire. So what if instead, when the urge showed up, you could just meet it with a moment of curiosity? Now, this is not a deep therapeutic excavation, just a pause. Just oh, there you are. What's going on? That small shift from contempt to curiosity changes the nervous system response. It creates just enough space that something other than the automatic reaction becomes possible. Now, the second thing is asking the part a question. Now, this might sound unusual if it's new to you, but I want you to stay with me. When the urge, that desire to eat, is present, you can ask it silently, internally, however feels natural to you. What are you trying to do for me right now? What are you afraid would happen if we didn't eat? Now, you might be surprised what comes up. Sometimes, especially in the beginning, you may get nothing, and that's okay. This part is not used to actually being communicated with. It's used to being hated and pushed away. But when you do start to get answers, sometimes the answer is something like, you're exhausted. Nobody is taking care of you. Sometimes it's, you've been holding it together all day and you just need to let go of something. Sometimes it's, you're sitting with a feeling that feels unbearable and you don't know how to move through it. None of those answers are about food. They're about what's actually happening underneath. And when you can hear what's actually happening underneath, you have options that you didn't have before. Now, the third thing is responding to what's underneath. This is not about having a perfect alternative to eating. It's not about white knuckling your way through the urge or going for a walk or calling a friend instead. Sometimes you will eat, and that's okay. But when you know what is actually underneath the urge, you can also begin to address that alongside the eating, or instead of it, or after it. You can ask yourself, what do I actually need right now? And you can begin over time to build the capacity to respond to that need in more ways than one. Now, I want you to hear this. This is not a switch that flips overnight. This is a practice. This is a relationship you are building with this part of yourself, with your own inner world. And like any relationship, it develops over time with repetition, with patience, and with a willingness to keep showing up even when it's imperfect. Now, I want to pause here and address this because I hear this concern a lot. This is not about being okay with binging forever. This is not about giving up on change or lowering your expectations for yourself. It is not about using compassion as a reason to avoid the work. What I'm describing is a fundamentally different kind of work. Not the work of control and suppression, which keeps you in the cycle, but the work of relationship with the parts of yourself that have been fighting, with the emotions that haven't had anywhere to go, with the nervous system that has been stuck in survival mode for a long time. When that relationship changes, when the parts stop fighting and start communicating, the behavior has room to change too. Not because you forced it, not because you went on some diet or changed your eating plan, but because the reason it was there starts to get addressed. The light on the dashboard goes off because what was happening under the hood is finally being attended to. Now, I want to share what some of the people that I work with have said about what this shift has been like for them because their words say it better than I can. So Cindy, one of my clients, put it this way. That part of me that wants to eat everything, I'm starting to see it differently. It's not the enemy. It's actually trying to help, trying to soothe something, protect me, give me relief. The more I fight it or judge it, the stronger it gets. But when I slow down and get curious, what are you trying to do for me right now? Something shifts. I step out of the struggle and into a place of leadership within myself. That phrase, a place of leadership within myself, is exactly what makes this work possible. Not domination, not defeat, leadership. You become someone who can hear all the parts, understand what they need, and respond from a place of calm rather than conflict. Gina described it this way. Seeing that the part that overeats and the part that has a very big problem with that behavior have the very same goal is enlightening and endearing. They both just want to take care of me in their limited ways. As I appreciate both of the struggling parts and their good intentions, they both calm down a bit. They are not so at odds with each other. Both parts want the same thing. They're just going about it differently. It's such a powerful reframe because when you can see that, the war stops making sense. And when it no longer makes sense to be at war, you can finally put down the weapons. And Carol shared this. Parts work has helped me to have a new relationship with my protectors and my inner child who is hiding and wanting to be seen and loved. It's the recognition of having an urge for certain foods when I'm not hungry that allows me to pause and attempt to connect with the part that is trying to protect me. I can talk to that part, let them know I appreciate their efforts, and ask for space to experiment. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but parts work is not a one and done. It takes time for the parts to trust you. It takes time for the parts to trust you. And I love that Carol said that because it's true and it's important. This is not a switch that flips once and stays flipped. It is a relationship that develops. And like any relationship, it gets richer and more nuanced the longer you tend to it. And that is what breaking free actually looks like. Not white knuckling your way to a finish line, but building something new from the inside out. And next week, I'm going to talk to you about what does it actually look like to break free from binge eating, to shift into a more peaceful relationship with food. What is that process? What does it look like? But for today, I'm going to leave you with this. If you have been in a battle with the part of you that binges for months, for years, or maybe for most of your adult life, or for some of you, your entire life, I want you to know that the exhaustion you feel is real. That battle takes an enormous amount of energy. Energy that could be going toward your life, toward the things and people that matter to you, toward actually feeling okay in your own body. You don't have to keep fighting. There is another way. The work of stopping the fight and building a different relationship with food and with yourself is exactly what we do together in Cultivate, my group coaching program. This is not a one-time insight. It's something that deepens over time in a container where you are supported, where you understand your nervous system, where you develop real responses to what's happening underneath, where the binges don't go away because you finally defeated them. They go away because the battle ends. Cultivate only opens twice a year. And if you're listening to this episode when it airs live, it happens to be open right now. Now, I also work privately with clients all year long based upon availability. And if what you are hearing resonates with you and you want support in doing this work, you can find out information about Cultivate or anything else I have to offer at janepilger.com, and I'll have the links in the show notes. Now, whether you are ready to take a next step or you are just beginning to consider this different way, you are in the right place. Keep listening. Keep getting curious. Set down the fight and know that the relationship with food and with yourself that you have been longing for is absolutely possible. That's what I have for you today. I'll see you next week. If what you heard today resonates with you, if you're ready to stop fighting and start building a different relationship with food and with yourself, Cultivate is where that work happens. Cultivate is my ongoing group coaching program, and it's where everything I teach here on the podcast goes deeper over time. You learn your nervous system. You understand what's driving the urges and how to respond to them. And the binges don't go away because you finally defeated them. They go away because the battle ends. Learn more and find out if it's a fit at janepilger.com/cultivate.